When was the last time you were completely alone? No phone, no background noise, no company, and genuinely felt okay about it? Not just tolerating it, not waiting for it to end, actually, quietly, surprisingly okay with it. If you cannot remember, you are not alone in that. And the irony of that phrase is exactly the kind of thing this video is going to sit with. Because most people have been taught very thoroughly that being alone is a problem, a temporary condition to be escaped, a gap in the social life that needs to be filled. And the first thing this video is going to do is question that teaching, honestly, directly, and with the kind of care that only comes from taking the question seriously. What if the happiness you have been looking for in other people, in relationships, in the constant company of others, is something that can only be found first in yourself? What if the person whose company you most need to enjoy is the person you have spent the least time genuinely getting to know? What if solitude, that thing most people treat as a waiting room between social engagements, is actually one of the most nourishing, most clarifying, most genuinely peaceful experiences available to a human being? And what if learning to be happy alone is not a consolation for people who cannot find company, but the foundational skill that makes every other relationship in life richer, deeper, and more genuinely free? These questions are not for people who are lonely. They are for anyone who has ever sensed that the answer they are looking for might be closer than they have been searching. Think of a tree that has been grown in a greenhouse, always sheltered, always watered on schedule, always given exactly the conditions it needed, never left to find its own resources. Now take that tree outside and plant it in ordinary soil, in ordinary weather, subject to ordinary conditions. It struggles, not because it is weak, because it has never learned to draw from its own roots. Now think of a tree that grew in open ground from the beginning, finding its own water, developing deep roots through the challenge of finding its own way. That second tree, when the storm comes, does not need to be held. It holds itself. And Buddhism has been teaching the cultivation of those roots, the inner roots of genuine happiness, for 25 centuries. Welcome to Wisdom Woven, where we take the questions that most channels avoid and go all the way into them. If this is your first time here, you are welcome, you are in the right place, and this video will give you more than you expected. If you have been here before, you know what we do here. And today we are going deeper than we have ever gone on the question of happiness. Please like this video, share it with someone who is currently sitting alone and not sure how to feel about that, and subscribe if you have not already done so. What you're about to hear might be the most important thing anyone has said to you about what it actually means to be genuinely, lastingly, unconditionally happy. Before we begin, a question for you, and I want you to actually answer it in the comments below. When you are completely alone, no obligations, no company, no distractions, what do you feel first? Is it relief? Is it discomfort? Is it a kind of hunger that reaches immediately for the phone or the television or anything that fills the silence? Write that feeling in the comments right now. Just one word or a few words, whatever is most honest. Because what you feel when you are alone tells you almost everything about your current relationship with yourself. And that relationship is the exact subject of this entire video. Right now, people from every kind of life situation are watching this video. People who are single by choice. People who are single and wish they were not. People in relationships who still feel profoundly alone. People who live in cities surrounded by millions of others and have never felt more isolated. People who live in genuine physical solitude and have found a quality of peace that most city dwellers will never know. What connects all of them is the same question, asked in different voices with different levels of urgency. How do I be happy with just myself? Your comment connects you to all of them, and the honesty of what you write matters, because honest questions are the only ones that lead to honest answers. So write one word, one sentence, whatever is true right now. We will return to those comments. And if there is one thing that this community does consistently well, it is being honest with each other in the comments section. But first, Let us dismantle the central lie that most people have been told about aloneness so carefully and so thoroughly that they no longer even recognize it as a lie. The lie is simple, that being alone means something is wrong, that the absence of company is a deficiency, that the person who is genuinely content in their own company is either lying or missing something. That lie has caused an incalculable amount of unnecessary suffering. And this video exists to replace it with something that is both more honest and considerably more useful. Let us begin. The most pervasive and least questioned assumption about human happiness is that it is fundamentally social, that it requires the presence of others to be real. This assumption is so deeply embedded in the culture that most people never examine it. It simply feels true. But when it is examined carefully, when the question is genuinely asked, where does the happiness actually come from? Something interesting emerges. The happiness experienced in the company of others is not produced by the others. It is produced by the mind that is in contact with them. And a mind capable of producing genuine happiness in the presence of others can, with the right understanding and the right practice, produce the same quality of happiness in any circumstance, including alone. Modern life has created a particular paradox that no previous human culture had to navigate. People are, by almost every objective measure, less alone than at any point in human history, connected digitally to more people, in more ways, with more frequency than was ever previously possible. And simultaneously, rates of loneliness, isolation, and the specific suffering of feeling fundamentally unseen and unknown by others are at historical highs. The connection is everywhere. The genuine contact is increasingly rare, and the ability to be genuinely at peace in one's own company, without the constant stimulation of social media, without the performance of a curated life, is becoming something that must be actively, deliberately cultivated. That cultivation is what this video is about. The Buddhist tradition has been teaching something about happiness and aloneness for 25 centuries that modern culture is only beginning to rediscover. The Buddha himself modeled it. He left his palace, his family, his social position, not as an act of despair, but as an act of genuine seeking. He spent extended periods of complete solitude, not as punishment, as practice. And what he found in that solitude, the quality of awareness, the depth of understanding, the genuine peace, was something that no amount of social engagement had produced in all the years before it. Buddhism does not say that relationships are unimportant. It says that the happiness available in relationships is always proportional to the happiness already present in oneself. The most important relationship in any human life is the one that almost no one discusses directly, because it is too close to be seen clearly. The relationship with yourself, the quality of how you treat yourself, talk to yourself, experience yourself in the quiet moments when no one is watching. That relationship, not any external relationship, is the foundation on which everything else is built. A person who finds their own company genuinely nourishing can bring genuine nourishment to every other relationship. A person who finds their own company intolerable will bring that intolerance, inevitably, however carefully disguised, into every relationship they try to build. There is a distinction that this video is going to draw carefully and repeatedly, because confusing these two things is at the root of most of the suffering this topic addresses. The distinction between solitude and loneliness. Loneliness is an unchosen, painful experience of disconnection, the feeling of being isolated from meaningful contact with others and with oneself. Solitude is a chosen, nourishing experience of being with oneself, the quality of a person who is genuinely comfortable in their own company and who finds in that company something that other company cannot provide. The goal of this video is not to help people tolerate loneliness better. It is to help them discover and cultivate the genuine art of solitude, and in doing so, transform the experience of aloneness from something feared into something genuinely sought. In the parts ahead, we're going to cover a range of territory that most discussions of happiness avoid, because it requires an honesty that is less comfortable than the usual prescriptions. We will look at the Buddhist teaching on the self and what it reveals about why aloneness feels so threatening to most people. We will look at the practice of building a genuine relationship with yourself, what that actually means, what it requires, and what it produces. We will look at the specific practices and habits that create genuine contentment in solitude, and the daily life structures that support a life that is genuinely happy whether company is present or not. And we will arrive at something that most people who have genuinely found it describe with the same word: freedom. Learning to be happy alone matters beyond the personal, and it matters in a way that is rarely acknowledged. The person who is genuinely happy alone is not a person who no longer needs or values others. They are a person who can be genuinely present with others because they are not using others to manage their own inner discomfort. They are not in relationships because they are afraid of what they would feel without them. They are in relationships because they genuinely want to be. And the difference between those two motivations is the difference between a connection that nourishes and a connection that drains. The most generous, most genuinely present, most genuinely available people in any human community are almost always people who have developed a deep and honest relationship with their own solitude, because they have something to bring, because they are not empty, needing to be filled, because their fullness has been cultivated in the quiet that others are running from. There is a specific and important kind of social pressure that most people who are learning to be comfortable alone experience. The pressure to explain themselves, to justify the preference for solitude, to reassure others that it is not antisocial, not depressive, not a sign of something wrong. Buddhism does not ask you to explain your inner life to anyone. It asks only that you know it, honestly, clearly, without the distortion of either performance or avoidance. The person who needs to perform contentment, who says they are fine with being alone because the alternative is admitting they are not, is not practicing what this video is about. The person who is genuinely becoming more comfortable in their own company, genuinely discovering what nourishes them, genuinely building an inner life worth inhabiting, that person does not need to explain anything to anyone. Modern happiness research has arrived at conclusions that most people find surprising, and that Buddhism would recognize immediately. The level of genuine happiness experienced by most people is surprisingly independent of their external circumstances, including their social circumstances. Studies consistently find that people who are voluntarily solitary, who have chosen their aloneness and are not in it against their will, report levels of life satisfaction that are comparable to or higher than people in relationships. What predicts happiness across virtually all serious research is not the quantity of social contact, but the quality of the inner relationship, the degree to which a person is genuinely at peace with themselves. That inner peace, not the right partner, not the right social life, not the right circumstances, is what Buddhism has been pointing at for 25 centuries. This video is an invitation not to become a recluse, not to withdraw from the people who matter in your life, not to pretend that connection is unimportant. An invitation to discover that the quality of your aloneness is a direct measure of the quality of your relationship with yourself. And that relationship, more than any other, determines the quality of your life. An invitation to take your own inner company seriously, to ask what it would mean to be genuinely good company for yourself, to begin the practice of cultivating the kind of inner life that you would want to spend time in. Not as a substitute for external connection, as the foundation from which genuine connection becomes possible for the first time. That foundation is what we are building today. What this video requires of you is a quality of honesty that is unusual and sometimes uncomfortable. Honesty about what you actually feel when you are alone, not what you think you should feel, not what you perform feeling to others, but what is actually present in the unobserved moments. Honesty about the degree to which your social life is genuinely nourishing versus genuinely distracting. Serving as company because you genuinely enjoy it, or serving as noise because the quiet is too uncomfortable. Honesty about what you actually know about yourself. Your genuine preferences, genuine values, genuine sources of meaning, versus what you have adopted from the expectations of others. That honesty, however uncomfortable it initially feels, is the beginning of the kind of self-knowledge that genuine happiness in solitude requires. By the end of this video, you will not have solved loneliness. If that is what you are experiencing, it is not something a video solves. But you will have a completely different framework for understanding what aloneness is, what it is for, and what is available inside it that cannot be found anywhere else. You will have specific, practical, immediately applicable tools for beginning to cultivate genuine contentment in your own company. And you will have a clearer sense of the specific inner work that transforms aloneness from a condition to be managed into a resource to be cultivated. That transformation is available to anyone who is willing to look honestly at their own inner life and willing to do the patient, unglamorous, completely worthwhile work of building a genuine relationship with themselves. The beginning of genuine happiness alone is the same as the beginning of every other genuine thing in the spiritual life. It begins with honesty, with stopping the performance, even the internal performance of okayness, and actually looking at what is here. It begins with curiosity rather than judgment, with asking, what is it like to be me, alone, in this moment? What is actually here when the noise stops? Not with the expectation that what is found will be pleasant, with the genuine openness to find whatever is actually here, and to begin from exactly where you are, the practice of becoming genuinely good company for yourself. That is where happiness alone begins, and the beginning, however uncertain, however imperfect, is the only place it can begin. There is a difference between solitude and loneliness that is so fundamental and so consistently overlooked that it deserves an entire part of this video. Not because the words are confusing, they are simple enough, but because the experience of one can feel remarkably similar to the experience of the other until the distinction becomes clear. And when the distinction becomes genuinely clear, not just intellectually understood, but actually felt in the body, it changes the entire quality of time spent alone. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted disconnection. Solitude is the richness of chosen aloneness. Same external circumstance. One person, no company, two completely different inner experiences. And the difference is not the circumstance. It is the relationship with the circumstance. Loneliness is, at its core, a signal. A deeply uncomfortable signal that the social dimension of the human being is not receiving what it genuinely needs. Not a character flaw, not evidence of being fundamentally unlovable. A signal like hunger, like thirst, pointing at a genuine need that is not currently being met. The problem is not the signal. The signal is honest and often useful. The problem is how the signal is interpreted. Most people interpret the signal of loneliness to mean you need more people, you need better relationships, you need to fix the external situation. Buddhism, and increasingly contemporary psychology, suggests a different interpretation. You need a better relationship with yourself. And that relationship is the one thing that can genuinely be cultivated, regardless of external circumstances. The philosopher Paul Tillich wrote that the loneliness of being human can never be healed by social relationships, only by the relationship with oneself. He was not the first to notice this, and he was not the last, but he stated it with unusual clarity. Because the person who cannot be comfortable alone, who cannot be genuinely at peace in their own company, will carry that discomfort into every social setting they enter. They will use social contact as a painkiller for inner discomfort rather than as genuine nourishment. And painkillers, however effective in the moment, do not heal the wound. The genuine healing of loneliness, the kind that actually lasts, always, without exception, runs through the development of genuine inner companionship. The word solitude comes from the Latin solus, alone, combined with the suffix that turns it into a state of being. But what is interesting is that the Latin root also connects to words, meaning whole, complete, intact. Being alone and being whole. In the etymology, whatever was meant consciously, there is a connection between genuine solitude and a quality of completeness. The Buddhist tradition would recognize this connection immediately. The person who has developed genuine solitude has cultivated the completeness of the self that does not require external conditions to be whole. Not perfection, not the absence of need, the wholeness of a mind that knows its own ground and can rest there. Genuine solitude, the kind that nourishes rather than depletes, has specific qualities that distinguish it from the loneliness it superficially resembles. It is chosen, even when aloneness is not chosen. When circumstances enforce it, the movement from loneliness to solitude is the movement of choosing internally to meet the aloneness with openness rather than resistance. It is purposeful, not necessarily with an explicit agenda, but with the quality of a mind that is oriented towards something, engaged with something, genuinely present rather than waiting for the situation to end. It is self-directed. The attention is turned inward, toward the inner life, toward genuine reflection, creativity, practice, or simply the nourishing quality of undirected awareness. And it has a quality of sufficiency. The sense, however unfamiliar and however counterintuitive, that what is here right now is genuinely enough. The movement from loneliness to solitude is not a change of circumstances, it is a change of relationship. The same empty apartment, the same Friday night alone, the same absence of company, experienced as loneliness by the person resisting it, and experienced as solitude by the person who has made the inner shift. That inner shift is not a performance. It is not telling yourself it is fine when it is not fine. It is not positive thinking applied to a genuinely difficult situation. It is the gradual, honest, practiced development of a different quality of relationship with oneself. A relationship in which being with oneself is not a burden to be endured, but a genuine practice to be cultivated. And like any genuine practice, it builds through consistency, through honesty, through the willingness to keep returning to the practice even in the moments when the loneliness is loudest. Buddhism teaches that the suffering of loneliness, like all suffering, arises not from the circumstance itself, but from the craving for the circumstance to be different. The specific craving involved in loneliness is the craving for connection, for contact, for the sense of being seen and known by another. This craving is not wrong. It points at something genuinely important. The human need for meaningful contact is real and should not be dismissed or suppressed. But craving, in the Buddhist analysis, does not produce its own satisfaction. The craving for connection does not produce connection. It produces suffering. And the suffering can be so intense that it prevents the very quality of inner openness that genuine connection requires. The person who is desperately lonely often cannot make genuine contact with others because the desperation itself creates a quality of need that most people experience as something to protect themselves from rather than to move toward. There is a teaching in the Buddhist tradition about the hungry ghost realm that applies directly to the experience of loneliness. The hungry ghost, depicted with a vast belly and a pinhole mouth, is always starving, always consuming, never satisfied. The loneliness that reaches desperately for social contact and consumes it without nourishment, and then reaches again, that is the hungry ghost quality applied to the social dimension. The genuine nourishment that solitude provides, and that genuine social connection also provides, cannot be consumed. It can only be received. And receiving requires a quality of openness and stillness that grasping completely prevents. This is why learning to be genuinely comfortable alone is not just personally nourishing, It is the specific practice that makes it possible to genuinely receive nourishment from others. The modern research on solitude supports something that Buddhism has always claimed. Chosen solitude is consistently associated with positive outcomes. Studies find that regular chosen solitary time is associated with higher creativity, better emotional regulation, clearer thinking, and greater reported life satisfaction. People who are comfortable with solitude, who seek it intentionally and experience it as nourishing, tend to have better relationships, not worse ones. Because they enter relationships from a place of genuine fullness rather than desperate emptiness. Because they have something to offer rather than something to extract. Because their inner life is rich enough that the relationship is an addition to it rather than a substitute for it. The evidence is clear. The person who fears solitude is not better socially. They are more dependent socially. And dependence, however natural, is not the same as genuine connection. There is a specific and underappreciated benefit of solitude that the Buddhist tradition identifies with unusual precision. The benefit of self-knowledge, the clear, direct, unmediated knowledge of one's own mind that is only available when the social performance has been suspended. In company, most people are always performing, not dishonestly but necessarily. There is always an audience, always a social role being inhabited, always some degree of self-presentation. In genuine solitude, the performance stops. And in the stopped performance, something becomes visible that was invisible while the performance was running. The actual contents of the mind, the actual quality of the emotional life, the actual values and impulses and fears and desires of the genuine self beneath the social self. That genuine self, known clearly, treated with honesty and compassion, is the foundation of everything that matters in a human life. The experience of loneliness, when genuinely examined rather than escaped from, often reveals specific and useful information. The specific quality of the connection being missed, the specific kind of understanding that feels absent, the specific dimension of the self that feels unseen. This information, however uncomfortable it is to sit with, is genuinely valuable. It points at what actually matters, what actually nourishes, what the person genuinely needs versus what they habitually reach for. Most people, when they finally stop running from the discomfort of loneliness and genuinely sit with it, discover that what they were missing was something more specific and more accessible than they had assumed. Not just people in general, a specific quality of contact, a specific kind of recognition, and often, most surprisingly, the recognition that what they most needed was a quality of contact with themselves that they had never genuinely experienced. The transition from loneliness to solitude, from suffering aloneness to cultivating it, begins with a single, simple, profoundly difficult act: stopping the escape. Stopping the automatic reach for the phone, the television, the food, the drink, the anything other than this that the lonely mind reflexively seeks whenever aloneness arises. Just stopping, for 5 minutes, for 10, for a period long enough that what is actually present in the aloneness becomes visible. Not comfortable, not pleasant necessarily, but visible and therefore workable. What is workable is transformable. What is avoided is permanent. The suffering that is run from is the suffering that waits at the end of every place the running leads. The practice of sitting with aloneness, genuinely without escape, with the same quality of open attention that meditation brings to other difficult experiences, is described in the Buddhist tradition as one of the most reliable paths to genuine insight. Because what is found, when the escape mechanisms are suspended, is not emptiness. It is fullness of a different kind. The fullness of one's own thoughts, one's own feelings, one's own presence. However unfamiliar, however uncomfortable. The fullness of the inner life that has been there all along, running in the background, never quite given the space to be fully itself, because something has always been filling the space first. Genuine solitude gives that inner life the space it needs, And what grows in that space, when it is genuinely given, is the foundation of everything this video is pointing toward. There's a particular kind of loneliness that deserves specific attention. The loneliness of the person who is surrounded by people and still feels completely alone. This is, in some ways, the most acute form of the experience, because it cannot be addressed by the conventional solution of more social contact. The social contact is already present, and the loneliness persists. Buddhism would say, the loneliness is not about the absence of people. It is about the absence of genuine contact with the people present and with oneself. The person who has never learned to be genuinely present to themselves or to others can be in a room full of people they love and still feel the specific isolation of the person who is nowhere fully arrived. The practice of being genuinely present to oneself first and then to others is the only thing that addresses this kind of loneliness at its actual root. The Buddhist concept of the island of self, Atadipa, is one of the most significant and most misunderstood teachings on aloneness. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, recorded as the Buddha's final instructions before his death, he told his students, "Be islands unto yourselves, be your own refuge. Not depend on each other, not depend on community. Be your own island, be your own refuge." This instruction is not a teaching in isolation or self-sufficiency in the conventional sense. It is an instruction in the cultivation of genuine inner stability, the kind of stability that does not depend on external conditions to be maintained. The person who is their own island is not cut off from others. They are capable of genuine relationship with others because they are not using those relationships to maintain a stability they have not yet developed within themselves. The development of the inner island, the inner stability, the inner refuge, is not something that can be borrowed from another person. It is built in exactly one place, in the honest, patient, consistent practice of being genuinely with oneself. In the mornings before the day's demands begin, in the evenings before the next distraction arrives, in the small pauses between activities that the untrained mind immediately fills, in the willingness to sit with whatever arises in genuine aloneness, without judgment, without reaching, without the automatic escape, long enough for the aloneness to reveal what it has been hiding. And what it has been hiding, in the experience of every practitioner who has genuinely developed this capacity, is not emptiness. It is the person they have always been, but never had the quiet to fully meet. Here is the single most important thing this section can offer, a recognition that, once genuinely absorbed, changes everything about the experience of being alone. The feeling of loneliness is not evidence that you need more people. It is evidence that you need more genuine contact with yourself. Not more self-analysis, not more introspection in the anxious circular sense. More genuine presence with your own experience. More actual, honest, warm, patient, interested presence with what it is like to be you, right now, in this moment. That presence, practiced, developed, gradually deepened over time, is what transforms aloneness from a wound into a resource, from something feared into something genuinely sought. The path from loneliness to solitude is not linear, and it is not always comfortable. There are days when the practice of genuine aloneness will feel genuinely nourishing, when the quiet feels spacious, and the inner life feels rich, and the solitude feels like exactly the right thing. And there are days when the loneliness is acute and the aloneness feels like a punishment, and the inner life feels empty, and the practice feels like it is not working. Both kinds of days are the practice. Both are part of the path. Neither one is the final answer, and neither one cancels out the other. The path is the willingness to continue, to return again and again to the practice of genuine solitude, trusting that what is being built in the difficult days is as real and as important as what is experienced in the nourishing ones. The researchers who study the psychology of solitude have identified what they call the capacity to be alone, a specific, learnable, developable capacity that is genuinely distinct from simply happening to be without company. People with high capacity to be alone consistently report richer inner lives, greater creativity, more stable emotional regulation, more genuine social relationships, and higher overall life satisfaction. People with low capacity to be alone consistently report the opposite, a quality of inner life that feels impoverished, a social life driven by avoidance of aloneness rather than genuine desire for connection, and an underlying dissatisfaction that no amount of social engagement seems to touch. The good news, the genuinely hopeful news, is that the capacity to be alone is not fixed at birth. It is cultivated through exactly the kind of practice that this video is describing, and it builds with honesty, with patience, with the willingness to keep returning to the practice. It builds. Solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the presence of connection with a different companion, the most consistent, most intimate, most reliable companion available. The companion of your own awareness, your own curiosity, your own capacity for genuine feeling and genuine reflection and genuine creativity. That companion has been with you every moment of your life, in every quiet moment and every crowded one, in the sleeping and the waking, in the remembered and the forgotten. And most people, without realizing it, have been running from that companion, filling every available moment with something that prevents the meeting, drowning out the quiet in which the meeting would become possible. The practice of solitude is, at its most essential, the practice of finally stopping the running, of turning around, of meeting the companion that has been patiently present all along. To understand why being alone feels threatening to most people, and to understand how that threat can be permanently dissolved, we need to go to the deepest teaching in the Buddhist tradition. The teaching on anatta, non-self, the recognition that the fixed, solid, permanent self that most people believe they are does not exist in the way they believe it does. This teaching is simultaneously the most liberating and the most disorienting thing Buddhism has to offer. Liberating because it dissolves the very structure that makes aloneness feel threatening. Disorienting because the structure being dissolved is the one most people have organized their entire life around. But let us go slowly, carefully, honestly, because this teaching is the key to everything that comes after it. The self that most people experience, the sense of being a solid, continuous, fixed entity looking out at the world from behind the eyes, feels from the inside absolutely real. It feels like the most real thing there is, more real than the world it perceives, the bedrock of all experience. And yet, when the Buddha asked his students to actually examine this self, to look for it directly rather than simply assume it was there, something interesting happened. The solid self that everyone was so certain of turned out, on direct examination, to be remarkably difficult to locate. Not because it was hidden, because it was not there in the way the assumptions suggested. What was found instead was something more dynamic, more fluid, more genuinely interesting. The Buddha described the self, what people experience as the fixed, permanent me, as a construction, a process, built moment by moment from 5 aggregates: the body, feeling tones, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Not a thing that has these 5 components. The 5 components themselves, assembled in a particular pattern, generating through that assembly the experience of being a unified, continuous self. Like a river that appears to be one thing, one body of water flowing consistently from source to sea, but is, at every moment, entirely different water. The river exists. No one disputes the river. But the river is not a fixed thing. It is a flowing process, and what is flowing is never the same twice. Now, here is why this teaching matters directly for the question of being happy alone. The threat of aloneness is, at its deepest level, the threat of the self being exposed, being left with itself, without the constant social engagement that has been reinforcing its sense of reality and solidity. In company, the self is constantly confirmed. People respond to it, react to it, see it, acknowledge it. The social mirror reflects the self back to itself, and the self feels real. Alone, especially in the deep quiet of genuine solitude, that mirror is absent, and without the mirror, the constructed self feels unstable, uncertain, potentially unreal. This is why genuine solitude is so uncomfortable for many people. It brings them face to face with the fluidity of the self that the social world has been helping them not to notice. But here is what the Buddhist tradition discovered, and what practitioners who have genuinely sat with their own aloneness consistently report. When the constructed self is seen clearly, when its flowing, constructed process-like nature is genuinely recognized rather than defended against, something remarkable happens. The anxiety about it dissolves, not because the self becomes more solid, but because the need for it to be solid dissolves along with the misunderstanding that it was solid in the first place. The fluid self, the process, the river, does not need to be defended or confirmed or reinforced by the social mirror to be genuine. It is genuine as a process. It is complete as a flowing process that does not need to be solid in order to be real, is, for the first time, capable of genuine rest. The specific quality of threat that aloneness produces for most people can be traced very precisely through the Buddhist analysis. When the social mirror is absent, when there is no one reflecting the self back to itself, the anxiety that arises is the anxiety of a self that has been depending on the mirror for its sense of reality. This is sometimes called in contemporary psychology the reflected sense of self, the experience of only feeling genuinely real when being seen by others. It is not a pathology. It is the natural result of having lived primarily in the social world without developing the inner resources of genuine self-knowledge. And the path through it is exactly what the Buddhist tradition describes. Not the acquisition of better mirrors, but the development of a direct, unmediated, honest relationship with one's own experience that does not require external reflection to feel real. The teaching of anatta also has a direct and beautiful implication for the fear of being alone that most people carry. If the self is not a fixed, isolated, bounded thing, if it is a process arising in dependence on conditions connected to everything that has contributed to it, then the sense of separation that makes aloneness feel like isolation is itself based on a misunderstanding. The person sitting alone in a room is not actually separate from the air they are breathing, the food that sustains them, the language in which their thoughts arise, the people whose teachings have shaped their understanding. All of that is present, not as a comforting story, but as a literal reality of the interdependent nature of everything that constitutes a self at any moment. The aloneness that feels like isolation is, from the perspective of anatta, a kind of optical illusion, the appearance of separation generated by the misperception of a fixed and bounded self. There is a practice in the Buddhist tradition, sometimes called the inquiry into self, that is used specifically to work with the fear of aloneness by examining its root directly. The instruction is simple: sit quietly and look for the self, not the body, that is easy to find, not the thoughts, those are there, the self that is having the thoughts, the one who is looking. Where is it? What is its shape? What are its edges? Where does it begin and where does it end? Most people, when they try this with genuine honesty and without the quick escape of a conceptual answer, find something surprising. The self they were looking for is not findable in the way they expected. What is found instead is something that is simultaneously more intimate and more spacious than the solid, bounded self that was being searched for. And that finding, however brief, is the beginning of a freedom that no amount of social reassurance can provide. The experience of not finding the self, of looking honestly and discovering that the solid thing that was being looked for is not there in the way it was assumed, is described in different traditions with different words. In Zen, it is sometimes called the first Kensho, a glimpse of the original face, prior to all the construction. In Tibetan Buddhism, it is called recognizing the nature of mind, the discovery that awareness itself is not the self it has been mistaken for. In the Theravada tradition, it is described as the arising of insight, the direct seeing of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self in one's own immediate experience. In all cases, the effect is similar, a quality of relief, of spaciousness, of the specific lightness that comes when something that was being heavily defended is seen not to require defense. The practical implication of the non-self teaching for the question of being happy alone is this. When the self is seen as a process rather than a fixed thing, when the anxiety about its solidity and permanence is gently released through genuine practice, the aloneness that felt threatening becomes available as something else entirely. Not the aloneness of a solid, isolated self, cut off from connection and suffering the isolation. The aloneness of awareness itself, open, spacious, connected by its very nature to everything that arises within it, not requiring social confirmation to be real. That aloneness, the aloneness of pure awareness, is what the tradition consistently describes as one of the most genuinely peaceful states available to a human being. Not isolation, completeness. This teaching does not ask you to believe that you do not exist. That would be absurd and also unhelpful. It asks you to examine what you actually are more honestly than you have examined it before. Not through the lens of what others say about you, not through the lens of your own self-image or self-story, but through direct, honest, patient observation of what is actually happening when you are present with your own experience. What is here when the social performance stops? What is here when the thoughts quiet, even briefly? What is the quality of the awareness that is present in the pauses between thoughts? These questions, sincerely asked and sincerely sat with, are the beginning of the investigation that eventually dissolves the threat of aloneness at its root. There is a specific practice recommended in the Theravada tradition for working with the fear and discomfort of solitude, and it connects directly to the non-self teaching. The practice is called the contemplation of the four elements within the body, earth, water, fire, and air, as a way of dissolving the sense of the self as a solid, bounded, isolated thing. As each element is felt directly in the body, the heaviness and solidity of earth, the fluidity of water, the warmth of fire, the movement of air. The sense of the body as a fixed, isolated object gradually gives way to the experience of the body as a dynamic, flowing, constantly exchanging process. In that experience, however brief, however incomplete, the sense of isolation that underlies loneliness becomes genuinely difficult to maintain. Because a flowing process is not isolated. It is, by its very nature, in constant exchange with everything around it. And the self that is a flowing process is, by its very nature, already connected. The Buddhist concept of interdependence, pratitya samutpada, applies directly to the question of aloneness in a way that is rarely articulated. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises in dependence on conditions, on everything else that has contributed to its existence at this moment. The person sitting alone is not actually alone in any ultimate sense. They are the meeting point of an enormous network of causes and conditions, biological, historical, cultural, relational, that extends in every direction without limit. The food that sustains them, the air they breathe, the language in which they think, the people whose lives have shaped their own, all of it present in the solitary room, in the body and mind of the person who thinks they are alone. When this is genuinely felt, not just understood intellectually, but felt as the actual quality of present experience, the aloneness transforms, not into pretend togetherness, but into something more accurate. The felt sense of being a node in an endlessly connected web. The self-preoccupation that loneliness generates, The constant exhausting focus on what I am missing, what I lack, what I need, what others have that I do not, is itself the primary obstacle to the genuine happiness that solitude offers. Buddhism identifies this self-preoccupation as one of the most consistent sources of suffering, not because self-care is wrong, but because the contracted, self-focused quality of the suffering mind is structurally incompatible with the spacious awareness in which genuine happiness arises. The practice of expanding awareness from the contracted self to the breath, from the breath to the body, from the body to the room, from the room to the world, is the direct antidote. Not by forgetting the self, by allowing the frame to expand until the self is experienced in proportion to everything else, neither inflated to fill the entire sky, nor diminished to nothingness, but simply present, simply itself, in the midst of everything. That proportion, the self experienced in its actual scale within the larger whole, is one of the most consistently peaceful and most consistently happiness-producing orientations available to a human mind. The Zen master Dogen wrote, "To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by all things." This is not an instruction in self-erasure. It is an instruction in what happens when the investigation of the self goes deep enough. When the self is examined honestly and thoroughly enough, when the search for its solid core reaches the place where that core is not found, the self is not destroyed. It is released from the burden of its own permanence, and in that release it becomes available to everything, to the sound of rain, to the taste of tea, to the quality of this breath, to the particular and unrepeatable quality of this moment of being alive. That availability, that openness to everything, is the opposite of the contracted isolation that loneliness describes, and it is found consistently and reliably in the genuine practice of solitude. There is a teaching sometimes attributed to the Zen tradition that cuts straight to the heart of why the practice of genuine solitude is also the practice of genuine connection. The teacher said, before enlightenment, alone in a crowd; after enlightenment, together in solitude. What changes is not the external circumstance, alone or surrounded. What changes is the quality of awareness meeting the circumstance. The person who has not developed genuine inner resources carries the specific isolation of the self-preoccupied mind into every crowd and every gathering. The person who has cultivated genuine inner resources carries the specific connectedness of the genuinely open mind into every moment of solitude, and experiences it not as isolation, but as companionship with the whole of things. The practical beginning of this practice, the beginning that is available right now, without years of meditation, without any special preparation, is the practice of honest self-inquiry. Not the anxious, circular, self-critical inquiry that most people mean when they say they are thinking about themselves. The open, curious, patient, genuinely interested inquiry that asks, what is actually here when I stop running from what is here? What is the quality of this moment of aloneness, felt directly rather than interpreted through the story of what it means? What is present? In the body, in the field of awareness, in the quality of this breath, that was there before the loneliness began and is still here beneath it. The discovery that most people make when they genuinely practice this kind of inquiry is simultaneously the simplest and the most startling thing in the entire tradition. What is here, beneath the loneliness and beneath the fear and beneath the story, is awareness. Plain, simple, undecorated awareness, present, alive, not lonely, not isolated, not in need of confirmation. Just here, exactly where it has always been, the most intimate thing imaginable and the most consistently overlooked. And that awareness, present in the most difficult moment of loneliness, is the ground of everything that this video has been calling genuine happiness alone. The Buddhist understanding of happiness is not primarily about feeling good. It is primarily about freedom. Freedom from the compulsive, exhausting, never-satisfied movement of the mind that is always reaching for what it does not have and pushing away what it does. Freedom to be here genuinely, fully, without the resistance or the grasping, in whatever circumstance is actually present. That freedom is what genuine solitude cultivates. And that freedom, when cultivated, changes the entire quality of every experience, alone and in company, in difficulty and in ease, in the ordinary and the extraordinary moments of a human life. It is the most fundamental happiness available, and it begins, always, without exception, in the willingness to be genuinely, honestly, fully present with whatever is here. The non-self teaching is not the end of the self. It is the beginning of the genuine self. The self that is not defended, not performed, not dependent on external confirmation to feel real. The self that can be alone without fear, because it knows that aloneness is not isolation. It is the quality of awareness encountering itself, which is the richest possible encounter. The self that can be in company without need, because it already has everything it actually needs, and the company becomes genuine nourishment rather than emergency supply. That self, genuine, fluid, undefended, comfortable in its own aloneness, is not a distant spiritual achievement. It is what you already are, underneath everything that has been covering it. And uncovering it begins, exactly as it has always begun, right now. The phrase, build a relationship with yourself, sounds, to many people, either obvious or vaguely new age. Obviously, you have a relationship with yourself. You are yourself. What else could it mean? But spend one day watching the quality of how you treat yourself, the internal voice, the standard you hold yourself to, the patience or impatience you bring to your own mistakes, the way you respond to your own needs, and the phrase becomes considerably less obvious. Most people, if they treated a close friend the way they treat themselves in the privacy of their own mind, would not have that friend for long. The inner critic is not a philosophical construct. It is a very real, very consistent, very audible voice, and for most people, it is the primary companion of their solitary hours. The relationship with yourself is a relationship with everything that implies about attention, about respect, about the quality of presence brought to the encounter. Most people relate to themselves primarily through the lens of evaluation. Am I performing well enough? Am I good enough? Am I ahead of or behind where I should be? This evaluative relationship, constant, comparative, rarely compassionate, is the primary reason that solitude feels uncomfortable for so many people. Because the inner evaluator does not rest. It is present in every quiet moment, with its assessments and its comparisons and its barely veiled contempt for any gap between the current reality and the imagined ideal. The first and most important task of building a genuine relationship with yourself is learning to relate to your own experience with something other than evaluation. Buddhism offers a specific and immediately practical alternative to the evaluative inner relationship. It calls it bare attention, the quality of meeting one's own experience with open, honest, non-judgmental awareness. Not, is this experience good or bad, right or wrong, better or worse than what I had hoped for? But what is this experience exactly as it is actually occurring in this moment? That shift from evaluation to genuine observation is the beginning of a relationship with oneself that is capable of producing genuine nourishment rather than the exhausting performance that evaluation always requires. The practice of treating yourself with the same quality of care and patience that you would bring to a person you genuinely love is central to the Buddhist teaching on metta, loving kindness. Most people can access genuine warmth and patience toward others, toward a struggling friend, a frightened child, someone they love who is having a difficult time. The same quality of warmth and patience directed toward oneself is called self-compassion in contemporary psychology and metta toward oneself in Buddhist practice. It is not self-indulgence. It is not permission to avoid accountability or to stop growing. It is the specific quality of warm, patient, honest care that makes growth possible, because growth requires a safe enough inner environment to take the risks that genuine change requires. The person who meets every mistake with harsh inner criticism is not more productive, not more accountable, not more likely to grow than the person who meets mistakes with honest, compassionate understanding. Research is very clear on this. So is the wisdom tradition. Building a relationship with yourself requires time, unhurried, uncommitted, genuinely available time spent in your own company. Not productive time, not self-improvement time, not meditation time, though that is part of it. Time that is simply given to the experience of being with yourself. The way you would give time to a friend you genuinely want to know better. Not with an agenda, not with a performance to deliver, but with the genuine availability of someone who is interested in what they will find. Most people never give themselves this kind of time. Every moment alone is either filled immediately with productivity or distraction, or experienced as a gap to be endured until company or activity returns. The specific practice of spending regular, unhurried time in your own company, doing something that genuinely interests you, or doing nothing at all, is the beginning of the relationship that genuine happiness alone requires. There is a quality of self-knowledge that can only be developed in solitude, and that is essential to the genuine happiness being discussed in this video. The knowledge of what actually nourishes you, as distinct from what merely distracts you, what genuinely energizes you, as distinct from what merely exhausts you, less than other things. What you actually value, as distinct from what you have been told to value. This knowledge sounds like it should be easy. Who knows yourself better than you? But most people, when they honestly examine the question, discover that their knowledge of their own genuine preferences is remarkably thin, because they have rarely given themselves the conditions in which genuine preferences can make themselves known. The conditions of genuine solitude, genuine quiet, genuine uncommitted time. In those conditions, given consistently over weeks and months, the genuine self begins to articulate itself. Not all at once, not in dramatic revelations, but in the quiet accumulation of moments in which what is genuinely true becomes distinguishable from what is merely habitual. The practice of keeping a journal, written honestly, without audience, without editing for presentation, is one of the most consistently effective tools for developing the self-knowledge that genuine solitude requires. The journal is not a record of events. It is a space for the kind of honest, unself-conscious, unperformed expression of one's own experience that most people never have outside of it. In the journal, the inner critic can be observed rather than obeyed. The real feeling can be named without the social filter. The genuine thought can be completed without the interruption of another person's response. Over time, the journal becomes a record of the self that is developing. And reading back through it, a person can see, often with genuine surprise, the degree to which they have been changing in directions they had not consciously noticed. That record, honest, cumulative, genuinely one's own, is a form of self-knowledge that has no substitute and that the practice of genuine solitude makes possible. There is a specific and underappreciated aspect of building a relationship with yourself that most discussions of the topic miss entirely. The relationship with the body, not the body as an aesthetic object to be managed or improved. The body as the primary site of one's own experience, the place where everything that is felt is actually felt. Most people have an extraordinarily distant and primarily evaluative relationship with their own body. They assess it, they criticize it, they manage it, they occasionally celebrate it when it performs as desired. What they rarely do is genuinely inhabit it, feel it from the inside, with the same quality of patient, warm, interested attention they might bring to a landscape they find genuinely beautiful. The practice of genuinely inhabiting the body, feeling the breath, the heartbeat, the weight, the warmth, is both a meditation practice and a practice in building the kind of genuine self-relationship that makes happiness alone possible. The inner voice, the continuous internal narration through which most people experience their own life, deserves specific attention in any honest discussion of building a relationship with yourself. For most people, that voice is predominantly critical, comparative, and harshly evaluative. And for people who spend a lot of time alone, that voice is the primary companion of their solitude. Buddhism does not suggest fighting this voice or suppressing it. It suggests meeting it with the same quality of honest, clear, non-reactive awareness that is brought to any other mental event. Noticing it, naming it, not as me, my genuine view, my actual assessment of myself, but as a mental event arising from conditioning, speaking in a particular tone for particular reasons. The person who can hear the inner critic with that quality of clear, unidentified awareness, who can note there is the critic again, speaking in its familiar voice, has already taken the most important step in transforming the relationship with themselves that the critic has been making impossible. One of the most genuinely transformative practices for building a better relationship with yourself is surprisingly simple and surprisingly rarely done. The practice of doing things alone that you genuinely enjoy, not as a consolation, not as a substitute for doing them with others, but as a genuinely chosen, genuinely nourishing activity in its own right. Going to a restaurant alone and genuinely tasting the meal, without the distraction of a companion or the self-consciousness of being seen alone. Watching a film alone and allowing the full, unshared emotional response without the social filter. Walking in nature alone and genuinely receiving what is there, the sounds, the light, the texture of the ground beneath the feet, without narrating it to someone else or checking it against social media. In each of these, the solitary experience is not lesser, it is different, more intimate with oneself, more genuinely received, more fully one's own. The relationship with yourself is also built through the quality of the commitments you make to yourself and how reliably you honor them. The most consistent form of self-disrespect that most people engage in, without recognizing it as such, is the making and breaking of commitments to themselves. I will meditate every morning, I will exercise regularly, I will write in my journal, I will spend time doing what genuinely nourishes me. These commitments are made and broken so routinely that most people no longer take them seriously, and in not taking them seriously, they have communicated something to themselves about their own reliability, their own worth, their own level of care toward themselves. Building a genuine relationship with yourself requires building genuine trustworthiness with yourself. Starting small, with commitments that are genuinely achievable and honoring them consistently. Not because self-discipline is a virtue to be performed, but because the experience of reliably keeping a promise to yourself is one of the most direct and most available experiences of genuine self-respect. The Buddhist concept of metta, loving kindness, applied to oneself, has a specific practice format that is worth describing in detail. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and bring to mind an image of yourself as you actually are, not the ideal version, not the worst version, but the genuine, complex, struggling, capable, imperfect, genuinely worthy person that you are. And offer that person, with as much genuine warmth as you can access, a simple wish. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you live with ease. Most people find the first few times they try this, offering themselves the same genuine warmth they can offer others, that something unexpected arises. Sometimes tears, sometimes resistance, sometimes the startling recognition of how long it has been since anyone, including themselves, genuinely wished them well. Whatever arises in the practice, allow it. It is information. It is the beginning of the relationship becoming real. The practice of genuine rest, Not distracted collapse, not productive recovery, but the deliberate, unapologetic setting down of all effort and all agenda, is one of the most undervalued practices for building a good relationship with yourself. Rest is the message that you matter enough to stop, that your well-being is not contingent on your productivity, that your worth is not measured by your output. Most people who struggle with genuine happiness alone struggle specifically with genuine rest, because rest requires being with themselves without anything to show for it, which feels, for the achievement-oriented mind, uncomfortably like failure. Buddhism does not see rest as weakness. It sees sustained engagement without renewal as the exhaustion of a resource that is finite and precious, and the inability to rest as a form of self-devaluation that undermines every other practice. Give yourself genuine rest, not as a reward for sufficient productivity, as a basic, unconditional, genuinely needed act of care toward the person who is inhabiting your life 24 hours a day. There is a practice sometimes called authentic expression, the deliberate, regular, genuine expression of one's own creative or intellectual or emotional life, that is described in multiple wisdom traditions as essential to genuine well-being. Not the performance of creativity for an audience, the genuine, private, purely for one's self-expression of what is actually present inside. Making something, a drawing, a piece of writing, a piece of music, a garden, a meal, not because it is good or impressive or worth sharing, but because the making of it is a genuine expression of what it is like to be this particular person in this particular moment. Most people suppress this dimension of themselves so thoroughly, fearing judgment, fearing that what they make is not good enough, fearing the vulnerability of genuine expression, that they lose contact with it almost entirely. And in losing it, they lose one of the most reliable and most genuinely nourishing sources of happiness in solitude that exists, the simple, complete, unconditional satisfaction of making something that is genuinely, honestly, entirely one's own. The relationship with yourself is deepened ultimately by the same thing that deepens any relationship: honest, sustained, patient attention given over time, without the requirement of immediate return. No relationship becomes genuine through a single dramatic encounter, or a single weekend retreat, or a single insight experience. It becomes genuine through the accumulation of honest moments, the small, unglamorous, entirely private moments in which you showed up for yourself, paid genuine attention, treated your own experience with the care it actually deserves. The relationship with yourself is built in those moments, in the morning practice kept on difficult mornings, in the journal entry written honestly when it would have been easier to avoid it, in the moment of genuine self-compassion offered when the inner critic arrived again with its familiar voice. Each of those moments is a deposit in the only account that cannot be lost, the account of genuine self-knowledge, genuine self-respect, and genuine inner friendship. And the return on that investment is the specific quality of happiness that this video is about. The happiness of a person who is genuinely glad to be in their own company. The person who has built a genuine relationship with themselves does something that changes every dimension of their life. They become, for the first time, genuinely interesting to themselves, genuinely curious about their own inner life, genuinely engaged with their own experience as a subject worth investigating. This is not narcissism. Narcissism is the desperate attempt to make the self the center of everything, because the self is not actually comfortable with itself. Genuine interest in oneself is the quality of the person who has developed enough inner honesty and enough inner compassion that the actual texture of their own experience, complex, imperfect, surprising, genuinely human, is something they find worth paying attention to. And a person who is genuinely interesting to themselves is never truly alone, because the companion of their own awareness, genuinely known and genuinely befriended, is always present. There is a final and perhaps most important dimension, of building a relationship with yourself that is rarely named directly. The dimension of self-forgiveness, the willingness to release the accumulated weight of everything the inner critic has collected and held as evidence against the self. The mistakes made, the opportunities not taken, the ways in which the life so far has not matched the life that was imagined or hoped for. Buddhism does not ask that these things be pretended away or reframed into positivity. It asks for clear seeing combined with genuine compassion, the recognition that what is past cannot be changed, that the person who did those things was doing the best they were capable of with the understanding they had at the time, and that the only thing available now is the quality of relationship with oneself in this present moment. Self-forgiveness is not weakness. It is the most courageous and most necessary act of genuine self-relationship, the act that releases the past from its grip on the present and makes the present available for the first time as a place where genuine happiness is possible. The relationship with yourself that this part of the video has been describing is not a project with a completion date. It is not something that is achieved and then set aside. It is an ongoing, daily, moment-by-moment practice of choosing genuine attention over avoidance, genuine honesty over performance, genuine compassion over criticism. It deepens over time, the way any genuine relationship deepens, not in a straight line, not without difficult periods, but consistently in the direction of greater honesty, greater kindness, greater genuine familiarity with what it is like to be exactly this person, in exactly this life, in exactly this moment. That familiarity, genuine, unsentimental, compassionate, curious, is the foundation of everything this video is promising. The happiness alone that is genuine, durable, unconditional, the happiness that does not require circumstances to cooperate, the happiness that is available because the person experiencing it has become, genuinely and without apology, good company for themselves. Here is the practice, simple, immediate, available right now. The next time you are alone, genuinely alone, without the distraction of phone or television or any other escape mechanism, try this. Sit, breathe, and simply ask yourself with genuine warmth and genuine interest, how are you doing really? Not the social answer, not the fine thanks performance, the actual, honest, unperformed answer. And whatever comes, welcome it, not as a problem to fix, as information, as the beginning of a genuine conversation with the most important person in your life. The genuine relationship with yourself is the one relationship in your entire life that cannot be lost. Every other relationship is subject to change, to ending, to the impermanence that marks everything conditioned. But the relationship with your own awareness, with the quality of genuine presence that you bring to your own experience, is available in every moment of every circumstance, including the most difficult ones. Building that relationship is not a consolation for the absence of external connection. It is the most important investment available to a human being, because everything else, every other relationship, every other source of happiness, is enriched or impoverished by the quality of this one foundational relationship. Begin it honestly, tend it patiently, and trust, based on the testimony of everyone who has genuinely undertaken this practice, that what grows from it will surprise you. The happiness that most people are chasing is the dramatic happiness, the landmark moments, the peak experiences, the events significant enough to justify putting in the effort of living. The wedding, the promotion, the trip of a lifetime, the achievement that was worth all the sacrifice. And there is nothing wrong with any of those things. They are genuinely good, and they deserve to be appreciated. But they make up, at the very most, a tiny fraction of a human life. The vast majority of any life, including the happiest lives, is composed of ordinary moments. And the quality of happiness available in those ordinary moments, the morning coffee, the walk to the mailbox, the meal eaten in quiet, the moment before sleep, determines the actual quality of a human life more than any peak experience ever could. Buddhism has a specific and radical teaching about ordinary moments that most people encounter, agree with intellectually, and then immediately forget the moment they return to their ordinary moments. The teaching is simply this: the extraordinary is available in the ordinary, in any moment, to any mind that has developed the quality of attention required to receive it. The sunset seen by the person who is genuinely present to it, and the sunset seen by the person who is planning tomorrow's meeting, are not the same experience. Not because the sunset is different, because the quality of attention meeting it is different. And the quality of attention is not a fixed trait. It is a cultivable skill. The most cultivable, the most immediately impactful, and the most consistently undervalued skill available to any human being. The Japanese aesthetic concept of mono-no-aware, sometimes translated as the pathos of things or the gentle sadness of passing things, points at a quality of experience that is directly relevant to finding joy in ordinary moments. It is the quality of genuine appreciation for the ordinary that arises when its impermanence is genuinely held. The cherry blossoms are beautiful in any season, but the cherry blossoms seen against the background of their own brevity, known to last only a week, appreciated in the knowledge of their coming fall, are experienced with a depth and a poignancy that the same flower seen as permanent would not carry. The impermanence that most people treat as the enemy of happiness is, in the Japanese aesthetic sensibility and in the Buddhist understanding of impermanence, actually the source of the most genuine and most deeply felt appreciation of what is present. What is here seen as passing becomes precious. What is precious, genuinely received, is happiness. The practice of savoring, described in contemporary positive psychology and identified in Buddhist practice as an aspect of genuine mindfulness, is the deliberate, conscious, extended appreciation of positive experience. Not rushing through it, not already planning the next thing, not taking it as a given. Stopping, actually feeling it, allowing it to be fully present and fully received before it passes. The morning coffee genuinely tasted, not swallowed while reading email, but actually tasted, the warmth of the cup in both hands, the particular quality of that particular morning, the simple animal pleasure of a warm drink in a cool room. That experience genuinely received is happiness, not happiness light, not a preliminary version of the real thing. Happiness, available, present, entirely sufficient in a cup of coffee. There is a teaching in the Zen tradition that is sometimes described as the practice of just this. Just this cup of tea, just this breath, just this moment of sunlight on the floor. Not this cup of tea while planning the meeting, not this breath while reviewing the conversation, not this moment of sunlight on the floor while thinking about the weekend. Just this, the complete, undivided, genuinely present arrival in what is actually here. This practice of just this is described by Zen teachers as the most direct path to the quality of joy that does not depend on circumstances. Because just this is always available. Just this is always enough. The problem is never the this. It is always the everything else added to it. The happiness available in ordinary moments is not contingent on the moments being pleasant. This is the part that surprises most people, because the assumption is that finding joy in the ordinary means finding ordinary moments pleasant. But joy in the Buddhist sense is not the same as pleasure. Pleasure depends on the pleasantness of the experience. Joy is a quality of genuine presence with whatever is here. The sound of rain on a roof, genuinely heard. Not pleasant exactly, not unpleasant, simply the actual sound of water on wood in the actual present moment. The genuine receiving of that sound, without the overlay of whether it is good or bad, whether it will ruin plans, whether it will last. That genuine receiving is a form of joy that does not need the rain to stop. There is a practice called sensory immersion that is used in multiple Buddhist-influenced meditation traditions as a tool for developing the capacity to find richness in ordinary experience. The instruction is simple. Choose one ordinary activity and give it your complete, undivided sensory attention for the duration of that activity. Walking, feel every aspect of the walk, the ground, the movement, the air, the sounds, the light. Eating, genuinely taste every bite, the specific flavors, the texture, the warmth or coolness, the way the experience changes from the first bite to the last. Washing the dishes, feel the warmth of the water, the weight of each object, the specific quality of this ordinary task being done with full attention rather than waiting for it to be over. In each case, the activity has not changed. The quality of attention has changed, and that change of attention changes the entire quality of the experience. The specific practice of gratitude, which has been mentioned in previous parts and deserves specific attention here in the context of ordinary happiness, has a particular application to solitary life. The person who is alone and unhappy about it tends to experience their aloneness as a deficit, as the absence of what should be there, what others have, what would be present in a better version of the current life. The practice of gratitude systematically, deliberately, honestly identifies what is actually present and actually good, not as a denial of genuine difficulty, but as a refusal to let genuine difficulty be the only truth that receives attention. The quality of light in the room, the specific pleasure of a piece of music listened to without the need to share the opinion of it, the freedom to spend a Sunday afternoon in complete accordance with genuine preference rather than social obligation. These are real, they are present, and the practice of genuinely noticing them, not performing gratitude but actually allowing genuine appreciation to arise, changes the experience of aloneness from deficit to richness. There is a specific and consistently reliable source of joy in solitude that most people with busy social lives genuinely do not know they are missing. The joy of genuine creative absorption, the state that psychologists call flow, in which attention is so completely and so genuinely engaged with a creative activity that the sense of time passing, the self-consciousness, the comparison with others, all of it drops away. Flow is most readily accessed in solitude because it requires the absence of social distraction, the absence of performance, the absence of the part of the mind that is always monitoring how one is being perceived. Most people's social lives, however rich, contain very little genuine flow because flow is not a social activity. It is a profoundly individual one. And the person who is learning to be happy alone, who is developing the capacity for genuine solitude, is also in the same process developing the conditions in which genuine creative flow becomes possible. That is not an incidental benefit. It is one of the deepest sources of happiness available to a human being. The Buddhist concept of equanimity, meeting all experiences, pleasant and unpleasant, with the same quality of balanced open awareness, has a direct and important application to the practice of finding joy in ordinary moments. Equanimity does not mean treating all experiences as equal in pleasure. It means meeting all experiences with the same quality of genuine presence. The ordinary moment meets with equanimity is not diminished. It is received more fully than the moment met with either craving or aversion. The ordinary Tuesday afternoon met with genuine equanimous attention, not the excitement of a peak experience, not the resistance of boredom, but the simple, clear, open presence of a mind that is genuinely here, contains more happiness than most people access in their most anticipated special occasions. Because the happiness was never in the occasion, it was always in the quality of mind meeting the occasion. And equanimity, steady, open, genuinely present, is the quality of mind that makes any moment available as a source of genuine happiness. Nature, the direct, unmediated experience of the natural world, is one of the most consistently reliable sources of ordinary joy available in solitude. Not nature as recreation or exercise, nature as a direct encounter with the world that exists entirely without reference to human concerns. the sky, the trees, the quality of the air, the particular light of this particular time of day. Research consistently finds that even brief periods of genuine contact with natural environments reduce stress hormones, improve mood, enhance creative thinking, and increase the quality of attention available for everything else. Buddhism would understand this not primarily in neurological terms, but in terms of the teaching on interdependence. The person in genuine contact with nature is, in that contact, experiencing directly the fundamental connectedness that the isolated self-sense has been obscuring. For the person who is alone, especially the person who is involuntarily alone and suffering from it, regular, genuine, phone-free contact with the natural world is not optional. It is one of the most reliable antidotes to the specific quality of isolation that urban, digital, human-saturated environments consistently produce. There is a quality of simple pleasure, uncomplicated, unglamorous, entirely ordinary, that Buddhism associates with the kind of life that is genuinely conducive to happiness. The pleasure of a clean room, the pleasure of a task completed with care, the pleasure of a meal prepared deliberately for oneself, with the same care that would be brought to preparing it for a guest. Most people reserve the quality of genuine care and deliberate attention for the things they do for or with others. They feed themselves carelessly. They live in their own space without genuinely attending to its quality. They treat themselves in 1,000 small daily ways as an afterthought. The practice of bringing genuine care to the small acts of self-maintenance, cooking the meal with attention, making the bed with care, preparing the space with the same quality of attention brought to it when guests are expected, is both a practice of self-respect and a practice in the cultivation of simple, ordinary, reliable joy. These are not grand gestures. They are the texture of a daily life that is genuinely inhabited rather than merely endured. The happiness available in ordinary moments is directly proportional to the quality of attention brought to those moments, and the quality of attention is directly proportional to the degree of presence versus the degree of distraction. This equation is simple, consistent, and almost entirely ignored in the organization of modern daily life. The modern environment is optimized with extraordinary technical sophistication for the capture and fragmentation of attention, because fragmented attention is commercially valuable in ways that sustained, present attention is not. The person who wants to find genuine joy in ordinary moments must, therefore, make a deliberate countercultural choice to protect the quality of their attention as the precious resource it actually is. To choose presence over stimulation, even when stimulation is more immediately appealing. To choose the ordinary moment, genuinely attended to, over the extraordinary moment, consumed while distracted. To choose, repeatedly and against the grain of the environment, the quality of attention that makes happiness in ordinary moments possible. There is a story attributed to the Zen tradition about a student who asked the master, "What is enlightenment?" The master said, "When I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." The student said, "But everyone does that." The master replied, "No. When most people eat, they are thinking of 1,000 other things. When most people sleep, they are worrying about tomorrow." The student finally understood. It was not about what was being done. It was about the quality of presence with which it was being done. Enlightenment in that story is not a distant spiritual achievement. It is the complete arrival in whatever is happening. The full, genuine, undistracted presence that transforms even the most ordinary act into something that is, in the most literal sense, fully alive. The ordinary happiness being described in this section is sometimes dismissed as small, as if the happiness found in a cup of tea or a piece of music or the quality of light in the late afternoon were somehow lesser than the happiness of great achievement or great social recognition. But ask any person who has lived long enough and paid genuine attention to their own experience. Where did the moments of genuine happiness actually occur? In the landmark moments, certainly, but more reliably, more consistently, more accessible than any landmark, in the 10,000 ordinary moments that made up the space between the landmarks. The happiness that can only be found in special circumstances is, by definition, available only when special circumstances arrive, which is rarely. The happiness that can be found in ordinary moments is available always, unconditionally, without requiring anything to be different from what it actually is. That is the happiness this video is pointing toward. That is the happiness worth cultivating. The specific experience of beauty, genuine aesthetic experience, whether in art or music or nature or the quality of human craft, is one of the most reliable and most accessible sources of ordinary joy available in solitude. Not because beauty requires sophistication or education to access, because genuine aesthetic experience is a form of the same quality of open, present, fully arrived attention that makes any ordinary moment rich. The person who genuinely listens to a piece of music, not as background, not as accompaniment to another activity, but with full attention, genuinely receiving what the music is offering, has access to a quality of experience that the same music playing in the background cannot produce. This is why the person learning to be happy alone often discovers, with genuine surprise, how much beauty has been present in their life all along, simply not received, because the quality of attention was not available. The beauty was there. The capacity to receive it increases with practice, and the joy of receiving it, however ordinary the source, is entirely real. The practice of what might be called small ceremonies, the deliberate ritualized attention brought to the ordinary acts of daily life, is described in the Japanese Buddhist tradition as a path to the quality of joy that does not depend on circumstances. The tea ceremony, Chado, is the most famous example. The taking of an ordinary act, making and drinking tea, and treating it with the quality of full, deliberate, genuinely present attention that transforms it from routine into something genuinely meaningful. The ceremony is not about the tea. It is about the quality of presence with which the tea is made and received. And that quality of presence, once developed through the practice of genuine ceremonial attention, begins to generalize. The morning coffee becomes a ceremony. The evening walk becomes a ceremony. The preparation of a simple meal becomes a ceremony. Not in a performative or excessive sense, in the sense of bringing genuine, full, unglamorous, completely present attention to what is actually here. And that attention, consistently, reliably, without drama, produces happiness. There is a final observation on the happiness available in ordinary moments that is perhaps the most important of all. The ordinary moment, genuinely received, has a quality that the peak experience frequently does not. It is enough. Not a preliminary, not a lesser version of something better that will eventually arrive. Enough as it is, right now. This sufficiency, this quality of the present moment being complete rather than provisional, is perhaps the clearest marker of the genuine happiness being described throughout this entire video. The person who can feel the sufficiency of this ordinary moment, however simple, however unspectacular, has found something that the entire apparatus of the modern world, with all its promises and all its stimulations, is systematically preventing. They have found enough, they have found here, they have found now, and they have discovered that now and here and enough, in the end, in every moment, are the only places happiness has ever lived. Begin with one ordinary moment today. Choose something you do every day and give it your complete attention for the duration of doing it. Not to make it special, not to extract from it some significance it doesn't have, just to actually receive it completely, without distraction, with the same genuine presence you would bring to something you know is about to end. Feel what is there. Notice what the attention discovers that the distraction was covering over. That discovery, however small, however ordinary, is the beginning of the happiness this video has been describing. Not someday, today, in the most ordinary thing available to you in the next hour of your actual life. The happiness available in ordinary moments is not a consolation prize for the person who is alone. It is not the second best option for the person who cannot access the peak experiences that social life is supposed to provide. It is the deepest, most durable, most reliably accessible form of happiness that has ever been described by anyone who has genuinely investigated the question across every wisdom tradition, every culture, every period of human history. It is the happiness of a person who has genuinely arrived in their own life, who is genuinely present in their own experience, who has stopped waiting for the special moment to grant permission to feel the happiness that was available in the ordinary moment all along. That happiness is available to you right now, in this ordinary moment, and the only thing required to receive it is the willingness to actually be here. There is a word in Sanskrit, santosha, that is usually translated as contentment, but this translation captures only part of what the word actually means. Santosha is not the contentment of someone who has given up or settled for less than they wanted. It is the contentment of someone who has genuinely understood what they actually need and discovered that what they actually need is far simpler, far more available, and far less dependent on external circumstances than the wanting mind had convinced them it was. In the Buddhist adjacent Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Santosha is identified as one of the fundamental practices of the spiritual life, not a nice feeling to aspire to, but an active practice to be cultivated deliberately. And in the Buddhist tradition itself, the same quality appears under different names and in different forms, always pointing at the same essential discovery, that genuine happiness is not the product of acquiring what one lacks, but of recognizing the sufficiency of what is already present. The opposite of santosha, the state that most of the modern world is organized around producing, is sometimes called in Sanskrit trishna, thirst, craving, the perpetual sense of not enough. Trishna is the engine of consumerism, the engine of social comparison, the engine of the specific suffering of the person who looks at their life and sees primarily what is missing. Buddhism identified Trishna as the primary cause of suffering in the second noble truth, and the identification was not pessimistic, it was diagnostic, because what is identified can be understood, and what is understood can be worked with. And Trishna, when clearly seen, not judged, not condemned, but genuinely recognized for what it is, begins to lose the automatic unconscious power it has when it is invisible. The practice of contentment begins always with honest examination of the baseline, the actual quality of the current life, seen without the overlay of comparison to an imagined better one. Not, compared to what I wish I had, what do I lack, but what is actually present in this actual life right now that has genuine value, that would be missed if it were gone, that constitutes genuine nourishment if genuinely received. This is not an exercise in forced gratitude or toxic positivity. It is an exercise in honest inventory, the same clear-eyed honesty that the tradition applies to everything. And what most people find when they do this exercise honestly and without the distorting lens of comparison is that the actual content of their lives, however ordinary, however different from the imagined ideal, contains more genuine value than the Trishna mind had allowed them to notice. There is a teaching from the Thai forest tradition, one of the most practically oriented schools of Theravada Buddhism, on the practice of contentment in daily life. The teacher, Ajahn Chah, said, "If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace." This teaching is often quoted as a teaching on non-attachment, and it is that, but it is also a teaching on contentment, specifically on the relationship between the grip of wanting and the availability of peace. Every demand that the current moment be different from what it is Every way in which the mind insists that more or different or better must arrive before genuine rest is possible is a grip on peace that prevents peace from arising. And every loosening of that grip, every genuine, honest, practiced moment of recognizing what is already here and genuinely receiving it, is a direct, immediate, real-time increase in the quality of contentment available. The modern world has a very specific and very sophisticated mechanism for preventing contentment, and it is worth naming it clearly. Social comparison. The continuous, often unconscious measurement of one's own life against the curated highlights of others. Social media has made this mechanism both more powerful and more constant than at any previous point in human history. The person who checks social media 50 times a day, which is average in many demographics, is performing 50 comparison operations, each of which implicitly or explicitly places the actual current life against a more exciting, more connected, more successful version visible in the feed. And each of those comparisons, however brief, moves the needle of the contentment dial in the wrong direction, generating a background dissatisfaction with what is actually present that accumulates day by day into a chronic low-grade inability to be genuinely happy with any actual life. The Buddhist antidote to comparison is not the suppression of awareness of how others live. It is the deliberate development of mudita, sympathetic joy, sometimes called appreciative joy. Mudita is the genuine happiness felt for the happiness of others. Not the performed congratulations of social obligation, but the real, warm, internal pleasure taken in the fact that someone else is doing well. It is one of the 4 Brahma Viharas, the 4 qualities of an awakened heart, and it is, for most people, the most difficult of the 4 to genuinely access, because it runs directly counter to the comparison mind's automatic response. If they have it and I don't, I should feel less, not more. Mudita is the practice of running that response in reverse. If they have it and I don't, the fact that it exists in the world is itself a source of genuine happiness, regardless of its distribution. The practice of contentment also has a direct relationship to the question of what the tradition calls simple living, the deliberate reduction of unnecessary complexity from the material dimension of life. The Buddha's teaching on right livelihood and right consumption is not primarily an ethical teaching. It is a teaching on the conditions that support genuine inner development. A life organized around the acquisition of more possessions, more options, more social capital, more of everything, is a life in which the wanting mind is continuously fed and therefore continuously active. A life that has been honestly examined and simplified, in which what is genuinely needed has been distinguished from what the wanting mind has merely convinced itself it needs, is a life in which the wanting mind has far less material to work with. And a wanting mind with less material is a mind that is more available for the quality of genuine presence in which contentment arises. There is a specific practice from the Stoic tradition, rediscovered independently by Buddhism and closely related in its structure, sometimes called negative visualization. The practice is to deliberately, consciously imagine the loss of something currently present and valued, a relationship, a capacity, a possession, a circumstance, not as a rehearsal for anxiety. As a deliberate appreciation strategy, by genuinely considering what it would be like to lose this, the mind is able to receive what is currently present with a quality of genuine appreciation that familiarity has obscured. The specific application for the person who is alone is powerful. Imagine genuinely losing the freedom, the silence, the self-determination that solitude provides. And then return to the actual present moment of actual solitude and notice, perhaps for the first time, how genuinely valuable what is here actually is. Contentment is not a fixed state to be achieved once and then maintained without effort. It is a quality that requires regular, deliberate, practiced cultivation. The wanting mind is strong, well-practiced, and culturally reinforced. It does not go quietly. The practice of contentment is, in the most practical terms, the practice of noticing when the wanting mind is running. When the dissatisfaction with what is present has begun generating the familiar story of what would be better if only things were different, and gently, without judgment, returning attention to what is actually here. Not suppressing the wanting, seeing it clearly, and choosing deliberately to redirect attention toward the genuine richness of what is actually present in the moment the wanting is trying to escape from. That choice, made again and again, with patience and without self-criticism for how often it needs to be made, is the practice of contentment. And the practice, sustained, changes the baseline orientation of the mind in the direction of genuine satisfaction. The Buddha himself modeled contentment in a way that was radical enough to shock his contemporaries. He lived with extraordinarily little: a robe, a bowl, a few possessions that could be carried by hand. Not as a performance of asceticism. He had already been through that and found it as unsatisfying as its opposite. As the practical expression of the discovery that genuine happiness does not require more than what a human being actually needs, and that what a human being actually needs is considerably less than what most human beings spend most of their energy trying to acquire. His contentment was not the contentment of someone who had given up. It was the contentment of someone who had genuinely found what was sufficient, and who knew from direct experience that sufficiency is a different thing from deprivation. There is a specific form of contentment that is particularly relevant to the person who is learning to be happy alone: the contentment of self-sufficiency. Not self-sufficiency in the survivalist sense, the rejection of all external support and community. Self-sufficiency in the inner sense, the quality of a mind that knows how to nourish itself, how to generate genuine interest and engagement in its own experience, how to find richness in what is available rather than only in what has been specifically provided. The self-sufficient mind is not the closed mind. It is the mind that brings its own richness to every encounter rather than expecting every encounter to supply the richness it lacks. That self-sufficient quality, inner resourcefulness, genuine creative engagement, the capacity for genuine interest in what is here, is both the product of the practice of contentment and one of its most reliable ongoing generators. The relationship between contentment and ambition is one that the Buddhist tradition navigates carefully, and the navigation deserves explicit attention. Contentment is not the suppression of aspiration or the death of the desire to grow, to contribute, to develop. It is the development of a quality of orientation in which growth is sought from a place of fullness rather than deficiency, from the genuine desire to express what is present rather than the anxious need to fill what is missing. The person who pursues a goal from a place of genuine contentment with where they currently are pursues it differently from the person who pursues it from a place of deficiency, more sustainably, more creatively, more joyfully, and ultimately more effectively. Contentment is not the enemy of ambition. It is the ground from which the most genuine, most freely chosen, most durably satisfying form of ambition grows. Here is a practice for contentment that can be done right now in any circumstance, with no special preparation. Look around at whatever is actually present in your current environment: the room, the quality of light, the sounds, the temperature of the air. And for one full minute, without reaching for anything, without planning anything, without reviewing anything, simply receive what is there, not with the requirement that it be beautiful or special or anything other than what it actually is. With the simple, patient, genuinely interested attention of someone who has just arrived in a place they have never been before and is noticing what is here for the first time. That quality of first-time attention, brought to any environment at all, reveals something that familiarity has been obscuring: the specific, particular, always different texture of this actual moment. And in that revealed texture, however ordinary, contentment is always available. The contentment of the person who is genuinely happy alone is sometimes mistaken by others for resignation, for the acceptance of a lesser life. This misunderstanding is understandable. From the outside, the person who has found genuine contentment in solitude may look like someone who has given up on the more that others are pursuing. But from the inside, the experience is precisely the opposite. Not giving up on more, but discovering that what was being called more was a substitute for something that the actual present moment already contains. The genuinely content person is not less than the person still pursuing more. They are, in a very specific and very important sense, ahead. They have found what the pursuing person is looking for, not after the pursuing was finished, in the discovery that the finish line was always right here, in the present moment, in the exact ordinary circumstance of their actual life. Contentment in solitude also has a specific relationship to the quality of rest that is rarely articulated. The person who is genuinely content with their solitary time is able to genuinely rest in it, to be neither productively engaged nor distracted, but simply present in a quality of ease that does not require anything to be happening. Most people cannot access this quality of rest, because the moment there is nothing happening, the wanting mind generates the experience of deficiency, of wasted time, of not enoughness. The genuine contentment of someone who has developed the practice means that even the doing nothing of genuine rest is experienced as sufficient, is experienced as genuinely nourishing, is experienced as, in its own way, complete. And the ability to genuinely rest, to be fully present in the nothing happening of an ordinary evening alone without reaching for distraction, is one of the clearest markers of the contentment that the practice of solitude is building. There is a teaching in the Tibetan tradition on what is called the rich old beggar, the person who sits on a pile of gold and does not know it is there, begging for coins from passing strangers. The teaching is applied to the experience of human beings who are sitting on an inexhaustible wealth of genuine happiness, in their own awareness, in the present moment, in the quality of experience always available when genuine attention is brought to it, and spending their lives begging from external circumstances for the very thing they are already sitting on. The contentment that the practice of genuine solitude develops is precisely the recognition of the gold, not through any external acquisition, through the honest, patient, gradually deepening recognition of what was already present. The gold was there when the video started. It will still be there when the video ends. The only thing that changes is whether it is recognized, and recognition begins in the willingness to look honestly at what is already here. The practice of contentment ultimately is the practice of accepting abundance, which sounds paradoxical only until it is experienced. Most people think of abundance in terms of having a lot. Buddhism thinks of abundance in terms of needing little while having enough. The person who needs a great deal in order to be content will rarely find it, because the standard moves faster than the supply. The person who has genuinely discovered what is actually sufficient, who has distinguished the genuine need from the socially constructed want, finds abundance in circumstances that others would describe as poverty. This is not a romanticization of deprivation. It is the recognition of what the research on happiness consistently confirms. Beyond a basic threshold of material security, additional material acquisition adds almost nothing to genuine happiness. What does add to genuine happiness consistently across all research is the quality of inner relationship, the quality of present moment engagement, and the quality of genuine contentment with what is already here. A final practice for contentment in solitude, one that combines the elements of this entire part of the video. At the end of each day, spent primarily alone, before the day is fully released into sleep, take 5 minutes to genuinely review what was present in that day. Not what was accomplished, not what was produced, what was present, what was genuinely good, what was received even briefly with genuine attention, what would have been missed if it had not been there. The quality of light, the sound of the afternoon, the meal that was actually tasted, the thought that was genuinely interesting, the breath that was genuinely felt, all of it genuinely present in the day, all of it genuinely nourishing in its way, all of it, if received with genuine attention, genuinely enough. The contentment this part of the video has been describing is not a destination that is reached and then maintained without further effort. It is a living practice, deepening through consistent attention, narrowing sometimes in difficult circumstances, expanding again as the practice is returned to. The measure of progress is not the absence of moments of dissatisfaction or wanting. It is the speed with which the mind returns to recognition of what is genuinely sufficient when dissatisfaction arises. That returning, quicker, more natural, more genuinely felt rather than merely performed, is the track record of the practice of contentment. And the track record, honestly observed over months and years, is one of the most genuinely encouraging things a practitioner of this path ever gets to see. The mind that was genuinely unable to access contentment in ordinary circumstances, through genuine and consistent practice, becomes a mind that finds contentment available where it could not find it before. Not as a forced conclusion, as a natural recognition, as what is simply here when attention is genuinely brought. Santosha, contentment, is not the end of the spiritual path. It is one of its most important foundations. A mind genuinely at rest in what is present has the qualities that every other practice requires: stability, openness, genuine interest without grasping, the capacity for sustained attention without the restlessness of deficiency. From that foundation, from genuine contentment with what is actually here, every other dimension of the path toward genuine happiness opens more naturally, more fully, more readily than it can from the ground of Trishna. The practice of contentment is the practice of becoming genuinely available to your own life, not the imagined life, not the life that will begin when circumstances improve, but this actual, ordinary, imperfect, genuinely present life. And this life, received with genuine contentment, met with genuine attention, inhabited with genuine honesty, is not a lesser version of the life you might have had. It is the only life there is, and it is, always and already, enough. There is a difference between a life that is endured and a life that is genuinely loved. And that difference does not primarily come from the life's circumstances. It comes from the quality of design, the degree to which the actual structure of daily life reflects genuine values, genuine preferences, and the genuine personality of the person living it. Most people's lives are shaped primarily by external demands, by what work requires, what social expectations suggest, what the culture models as the appropriate shape of a well-lived life. The person who has learned to be genuinely happy alone has typically developed something that most people never develop: a clear, honest, self-directed relationship to the question of what their actual life should look and feel like. This part of the video is about the practical construction of that life, the specific choices, habits, structures, and practices that build a daily existence that is genuinely worth inhabiting alone. The first step in building a life you actually love is one that is rarely recommended because it is temporarily uncomfortable. The step of genuine stopping, of removing enough distraction and obligation to allow the actual preferences of the actual self to become audible. Most people have never genuinely stopped long enough to hear what they actually like, as distinct from what they have been told to like or what they habitually reach for when they are not paying attention. What kind of silence do they genuinely prefer? What time of day do they feel most genuinely alive? What activities, not productive activities, not obligatory activities, but genuinely freely chosen activities, leave them feeling genuinely nourished rather than merely less depleted? These questions, which seem simple, turn out to require a surprising amount of genuine, unpressured, undistracted time to answer honestly, because the answers are often quite different from what the habitual, performance-oriented mind would quickly generate. The practice of deliberate daily structure, designing the days with the same care that would be brought to designing a home, is described in multiple wisdom traditions as essential to genuine inner development. Structure is not rigidity. It is not the same as schedule in the corporate sense. It is the deliberate organization of time in ways that reflect genuine values and support genuine well-being, creating the conditions in which what matters most is protected from what merely demands. For the person alone, the structure of the day is entirely self-determined, which is simultaneously one of the greatest gifts of solitary life and one of its most significant challenges. Without the external structure that others provide, the temptation is either to overschedule in anxious compensation or to drift without direction. And neither extreme creates the conditions in which genuine happiness is consistently available. The morning practice, the quality of the first hour of each day, is described across virtually every contemplative tradition as the single most important structural element of a life that supports inner development. Not because of any mystical significance to the morning hours, but because the quality of attention and intention established in the morning tends to set the tone for the quality of the entire day. The person who begins the day by immediately engaging with the phone, checking messages, social media, news, the immediate demands of others, has established a quality of reactive attention that tends to persist. The person who begins with genuine practice, however brief, however simple, has established a quality of presence and intention that also tends to persist. What that practice looks like is secondary to the fact of having it, a period, however short, at the beginning of each day that is genuinely one's own and genuinely devoted to the quality of inner life rather than the demands of the external one. For the person who is alone and working to find genuine happiness in that aloneness, the cultivation of meaningful, regular practices is one of the most consistently effective structural interventions available. Not activities performed for others or for social recognition, practices that are genuinely one's own, done because they matter to the person doing them, maintained because they genuinely nourish. A regular meditation practice, a regular physical practice, walking, yoga, swimming, whatever form genuinely suits. A regular creative practice, writing, drawing, making music, whatever form the creative impulse naturally takes. A regular practice of contact with nature. A regular practice of learning something genuinely interesting. A regular practice of engaging with ideas, art, or beauty that genuinely moves the person encountering it. The consistency of these practices, maintained not from obligation, but from genuine relationship with the nourishment they provide, creates the underlying structure of a life that is genuinely worth inhabiting, regardless of whether others are there to witness it. The relationship with the physical space in which solitary life is lived deserves specific attention, because the space shapes the quality of the inner life that inhabits it in ways that most people underestimate. The space does not need to be beautiful in any expensive or conventional sense. It needs to be genuinely cared for, arranged with attention, maintained with care, treated as the environment of a life that matters. This means different things to different people. For some, it means radical simplicity, only what is genuinely needed, carefully arranged. For others, it means richness, books, plants, art, the accumulated evidence of a life genuinely lived. What it does not mean is the neglect that most people apply to their own space when they are alone. The accumulation of disorder, the half-living in spaces that reflect the sense that the person inhabiting them is not quite real enough to deserve care. The quality of care brought to one's own living space is a form of self-respect, and self-respect practiced in the small physical acts of daily maintenance is both the product of and a contribution to the genuine happiness of solitary life. One of the most consistently undervalued sources of genuine richness in solitary life is what might be called the practice of genuine learning, not the instrumental learning of a skill required for work. The genuine pursuit of understanding, driven purely by genuine curiosity, the exploration of ideas, histories, sciences, arts, and philosophies that interest the learner without any external requirement to be interested. The person alone has something extraordinarily rare: time and freedom to follow genuine curiosity wherever it leads, without the social filtering of what others will find interesting or impressive. This freedom, the freedom of genuine intellectual and creative exploration, is one of the greatest gifts of solitary life, and one that most people who are unhappy in their solitude are entirely failing to use. The life genuinely organized around genuine curiosity, following what genuinely interests, exploring what genuinely moves, learning what genuinely expands the understanding, is a life that is never genuinely empty, because genuine curiosity, once followed honestly, reliably generates more genuine curiosity than it began with. The cultivation of what might be called a personal philosophy, a genuine, honestly developed, personally held understanding of what matters, what is valuable, and how a human life is worth living, is one of the most distinctively solitary and most genuinely important practices available. Most people's operating philosophy is borrowed, assembled from cultural norms, parental expectations, peer values, and the implicit assumptions of the social world in which they grew up. It works as an operating system most of the time, but it was not designed for their particular life, and it frequently produces outcomes that feel inexplicably wrong for someone who is following all the expected rules. The person who has taken the time, and the solitude is essential for this, to genuinely examine what they actually believe, what they actually value, what kind of life they actually want to live and why, operates from an entirely different foundation. A foundation that is genuinely their own, and the life built on that foundation, however simple, however different from the conventional model, is the kind of life that is genuinely worth being alone in. The social dimension of a life genuinely organized for happiness in solitude deserves honest attention, because the teaching here is not antisocial. The person who has cultivated genuine happiness alone does not withdraw from social connection. They approach it differently. Rather than attending every available social event from the low-level anxiety of not wanting to miss out or be seen as antisocial, they make deliberate choices about how and with whom they spend social time. Fewer obligations, more genuine connection, less performance, more actual presence, less social contact that depletes, and more social contact that genuinely nourishes. The quality of social life available to the person who has developed genuine happiness in solitude is typically higher, more genuine, more mutually nourishing, more honestly chosen than the quality of social life of the person who is always seeking company out of the inability to be genuinely comfortable alone. The relationship with creative work, whatever form that takes, is one of the most reliable and most distinctively individual sources of genuine happiness available in solitary life. Not creative work as productivity, not creative work as self-expression performed for an audience. The specific quality of creative engagement in which a person is genuinely absorbed in something they are making, something that is genuinely theirs, genuinely emerged from their own inner life, genuinely expressing something that could not be expressed any other way. The poet who writes because the poem needs to be written and not because she wants to be known as a poet. The gardener who tends the garden because the tending itself is meaningful and not because she wants to impress anyone who visits. The cook who prepares a meal with genuine creative attention and serves it only to herself. These are not lesser forms of creative life. They are, in many ways, its purest form, uncorrupted by the performance that the presence of an audience always introduces. There is a quality of daily life that the Buddhist tradition describes as dharmic, aligned with one's genuine nature and therefore genuinely nourishing, that is developed through honest self-inquiry over time. Not the nature that the culture has constructed, the actual, specific, genuine nature of this particular person, including the ways in which it differs from what is conventionally expected. The introvert who stops trying to perform extroversion and instead honors the genuine need for solitude and quiet as the foundation of genuine well-being. The person who does not enjoy conventional social activities and stops attending them out of obligation, replacing them with what genuinely nourishes. The person whose deepest interests are considered unconventional and who stops hiding them in favor of pursuits that are socially acceptable. The dharmic life, the life genuinely aligned with actual nature, is not always the conventional life. And for the person learning to be happy alone, discovering and honoring one's genuine nature is not selfishness. It is the most direct path to the genuine well-being that makes genuine contribution possible. The quality of sleep, already mentioned in earlier parts, deserves specific treatment here in the context of building a life worth inhabiting alone. For the person who is alone, the hours before and after sleep are often the most genuinely solitary, and therefore either the most nourishing or the most difficult. The deliberate design of the sleep environment and the pre-sleep practice is an act of care toward the self that most people ignore, treating the transition into sleep as an afterthought rather than one of the most important daily transitions available. A room that is genuinely prepared for sleep, dark, quiet, comfortable, free from the intrusion of screens, is a different environment from the one most people fall asleep in. And the practice of genuinely preparing for sleep, releasing the day, offering the body genuine rest, allowing the mind to settle rather than stimulating it right up to the moment of sleep, produces a different quality of rest and therefore a different quality of waking. The cultivation of what might be called a personal aesthetic, a genuine sense of what is beautiful, what is meaningful, what is worth surrounding oneself with, is one of the most characteristically solitary and most genuinely nourishing dimensions of building a life worth inhabiting alone. The person alone has complete freedom to organize their environment, their time, and their attention according to genuine aesthetic preference, without negotiation, without compromise, without the social filtering that the presence of others always introduces. This freedom is rarely experienced as such by people who are unhappy in their aloneness. It is experienced as emptiness, the absence of someone with whom to share the aesthetic. But the person who has developed genuine inner relationship, who genuinely knows their own aesthetic preferences and genuinely honors them, experiences this freedom as one of the most distinctively pleasurable dimensions of solitary life. The space arranged entirely according to genuine preference, the music chosen without consideration of what others will enjoy, the day organized around what is genuinely nourishing rather than what is socially expected. There is an aspect of creating a genuinely loved life that is rarely discussed in the context of solitude, the cultivation of genuine service and contribution. The person who organizes their solitary life around what genuinely gives back, who finds meaningful ways to contribute to the world beyond the boundaries of their own inner life, has access to a dimension of happiness that purely self-focused solitude cannot provide. This is not an instruction to sacrifice solitary time for obligation. It is a recognition that genuine contribution, freely chosen, genuinely motivated, directly experienced as meaningful, is one of the most reliably nourishing activities available to any human being, regardless of their social situation. The volunteer who brings their full, unhurried, genuinely caring attention to another person's situation. The teacher who genuinely loves what they are teaching and who brings that love to each student. The person who tends a community garden, or writes something genuinely useful, or creates something that genuinely helps. The happiness of contribution is not dependent on being witnessed or recognized. It is available in the quality of the act itself, in the genuine care brought to it. And it is one of the most durable and most consistently available sources of genuine happiness in any life, solitary or otherwise. Or, one of the most important structural choices in creating a life genuinely worth inhabiting alone is the choice of where to live. Not in the sense of which city or which neighborhood, but in the sense of what kind of relationship with the physical world the living space supports. The person who genuinely thrives in solitude has usually found a relationship with their environment, whether urban, rural, natural, or some combination, that supports the quality of inner life they are trying to cultivate. This is not a luxury consideration. It is a practical one. The environment in which a life is lived shapes the quality of the inner life inhabiting it more directly than most people acknowledge. The daily walk in genuinely natural surroundings is not available to everyone, but some relationship with the natural world, however brief, however simple, is available to almost everyone and is consistently one of the most nourishing regular practices in the life of the happy, solitary person. The city street that becomes a place of genuine presence. The small garden tended with genuine attention. The park bench that becomes a regular place of genuine rest. Whatever form it takes, the relationship with the world beyond the human-made world is worth finding and worth protecting. The practice of Sabbath, in the broad, cross-cultural, non-religious sense of one day each week genuinely set apart from work, obligation, and productivity, is one of the most consistently recommended structural elements in the lives of people who report genuine happiness. Not a day of aggressive leisure activity, a day of genuine rest, genuine choice, genuine uncommitted time. A day in which nothing is required, nothing is owed, nothing is being prepared for or recovered from. A day that is simply, genuinely, fully one's own. For the person who is alone, this practice is particularly powerful. One day each week that is completely unstructured by obligation, devoted entirely to what genuinely nourishes, genuinely interests, genuinely restores. If such a day is not currently possible in its entirety, even a Sabbath morning, 3 hours of genuine uncommitted time is enormously nourishing, and it is a direct, practical, immediately implementable act of respect for the life being lived. The quality of the life being created in solitude is measured not by its resemblance to conventional models of the good life, not by its social recognition, not by its material achievement, not by the approval of others, but by one criterion alone. Does it feel genuinely worth inhabiting from the inside? Does the person waking into it on an ordinary morning feel something that can honestly be called genuine gladness for the day ahead? Not every morning, no life, however genuinely designed, produces genuine gladness every morning. But as a baseline, as the default quality rather than the exceptional one, is this life genuinely worth being in? That question, asked honestly and regularly, is the most useful quality measure available to the person building a life of genuine solitary happiness. And the willingness to answer it honestly, to acknowledge both what is working and what needs to change, is itself the most important practice in the building. The person who has genuinely built a life worth inhabiting alone has typically made a series of decisions that from the outside look like limitations, but from the inside are experienced as freedoms. The decision to say no to social obligations that drain without nourishing, the decision to protect the time that is genuinely one's own, the decision to organize the daily structure around what genuinely matters rather than what is merely expected. Each of these decisions involves some degree of countercultural courage, the courage to live in a way that does not conform to the conventional model of what a well-lived social life looks like. But the person who has made these decisions, genuinely, not defensively, does not experience them as losses. They experience them as the exact opposite, as the specific freedoms that make genuine happiness possible. The freedoms that cannot be accessed while the life is organized primarily around external expectation rather than internal truth. There is a quality of life that the Buddhist tradition describes with a phrase that is difficult to translate precisely: sukha in the deepest sense. Not the happiness of favorable circumstances, the deep, quiet, abiding ease of a person who is genuinely at home in their own existence, at home in their own body, at home in their own mind, at home in the particular and unrepeatable shape of the life they are living. This quality, sukha in its deepest expression, is not produced by getting the external life right. It is produced by the alignment between the inner life and the outer one, by the growing correspondence between who one genuinely is and how one genuinely lives. That alignment, built through the honest, patient, gradually deepening work of knowing oneself and honoring what is known, is the foundation of the life genuinely worth inhabiting alone. And it is available to anyone willing to do the work. Creating a life genuinely worth inhabiting alone is not a project undertaken once and completed. It is an ongoing practice of honest attention to what is genuinely working, genuine gratitude for what is genuinely nourishing, and the courage to keep adjusting toward what is most genuinely true. The life keeps changing. The person keeps developing. What was genuinely nourishing in one period may need to be replaced or supplemented in another. And the willingness to keep asking the honest question, is this still genuinely good? Is this still genuinely mine? Is what keeps the life genuinely aligned with the person living it, rather than becoming another set of habits performed automatically while the actual self quietly waits for permission to be itself. The life worth inhabiting alone is not a finished thing. It is a living practice, patient, honest, genuinely self-directed, and genuinely, durably, unconditionally worth getting out of bed for. We began this video with a question. When was the last time you were completely alone and genuinely okay with it? That question, asked at the beginning, was a diagnostic. It was pointing at the gap between where most people are and where genuine happiness in solitude lives. This final part is not a summary. It is a destination, the place that everything in this video has been walking toward. The destination is not complicated. It does not require more than what you already have. It requires only the recognition of something that has been true all along and that every part of this video has been trying to help you see. Here is what has been true all along, and what the entire Buddhist tradition, in all its schools, all its centuries, all its languages, has been saying in every direction it has ever pointed. You are enough. Not as a consolation, not as a positive affirmation, as an actual, verifiable, directly observable fact about the nature of awareness and the nature of genuine happiness. The awareness that is present in you right now, reading these words, receiving these ideas, genuinely and honestly showing up for this exploration. That awareness is not lacking anything that it needs in order to be genuinely, authentically, durably happy. It is not lacking the right relationship, the right circumstances, the right amount of company or recognition or achievement. What it has been lacking, and what every genuine practice, every genuine moment of honest self-examination, every genuine encounter with the teaching has been slowly providing, is the recognition of its own sufficiency. The loneliness that brought you to this video, if loneliness was what brought you here, is not evidence that you are lacking something essential. It is evidence that the recognition of your own sufficiency has not yet fully arrived, and there is no judgment in that. The recognition is genuinely difficult. The path to it is genuinely long, and the world in which most people are living actively works against it at every turn. But the loneliness is not the truth about you. It is the experience of someone who has not yet fully recognized the truth about themselves. And the recognition, when it comes, however gradually, however imperfectly, however many times it needs to be renewed, changes the experience of aloneness from the inside out, permanently, without requiring external circumstances to change at all. That recognition is available to you. It is available right now. It is what every moment of genuine practice, every moment of honest self-examination, every moment of truly present solitude is building toward. The happiness of being alone, genuinely, durably, unconditionally happy in one's own company, is not a lesser happiness than the happiness of being with others. It is the foundation of all happiness, because the person who is genuinely happy alone is genuinely available to every other dimension of experience, available to genuine connection when it comes, without the distortion of need, available to genuine creativity without the censorship of the performance, available to genuine rest without the guilt of wasted time, available to genuine engagement with the world without the filter of comparison and deficit. The happy, solitary person is not someone who has given up on the world. They are someone who has genuinely arrived in it, in the only place it is ever possible to arrive. Here, now, in this breath, in this body, in this actual and ordinary and completely sufficient life. That arrival is what this video has been pointing toward, and the pointing is done. What comes next is yours. There is a story from the Sufi tradition, not Buddhist, but pointing at the same thing Buddhism points at, about a man who spent his entire life searching for God. He went from city to city, from teacher to teacher, from tradition to tradition. He sat in caves and monasteries and deserts. One day, at the end of his life, exhausted and still searching, he sat under a tree and wept. And in the weeping, in the moment the search finally stopped, he heard a voice. "I have been with you everywhere, in every city, every teacher, every cave, in every moment of the search. It was always here. It was you who were always somewhere else. The you who is here, genuinely present even for a moment, even briefly, even imperfectly, is the one who finds what every search has been looking for. Not the you who is reviewing the past, not the you who is anticipating the future, not the you who is comparing, evaluating, measuring. The you who is simply here, in this breath, in this awareness, in this moment of genuine presence. That you, simple, available, not performing and not hiding, is already everything the search has been looking for. And the discovery of that is not a dramatic spiritual event. It is, in the words of practitioners who have genuinely found it, the quietest and the most ordinary thing in the world. Just this. Just here. Just enough. The practical question that remains, after everything this video has offered, is the simplest one. What are you going to do tomorrow morning? Not what philosophy are you going to carry? Not what insights are you going to integrate? What are you going to actually do in the actual first hour of the actual tomorrow to begin building the relationship with your own aloneness that genuine happiness requires? 5 minutes of sitting in genuine quiet, one full conscious breath, one ordinary moment given genuine, unhurried, completely present attention. That is where it begins, not in a dramatic commitment. In the next available ordinary moment genuinely received, begin there. The teaching of this video can be summarized in 5 words that the Buddhist tradition has been saying for 25 centuries, and that every genuine practitioner who has truly arrived in their own aloneness eventually discovers to be exactly, completely, unqualifiedly true. The happiness is within you. Not nearby, not almost within you, if you could only become slightly different or slightly better or slightly more or slightly less. Within you, now, as you are, in this moment of exactly this life. It is within you the way gold is within the ore, present all along, simply requiring the patient, honest, genuine work of removing what is covering it. The covering is not permanent, the gold is. The unresolved question that we leave you with, genuinely unresolved, meant to be lived with and returned to, is this. What would your actual daily life look and feel like if you genuinely believed that you were already enough? Not if you tried to convince yourself you were enough. If you actually knew it the way you know the sun will rise, with the quiet certainty of something directly experienced rather than effortfully maintained. How would you spend tomorrow? What would you stop doing? What would you begin? What would become possible that is currently impossible because the trying is using the energy that the living requires? Sit with that question. Let it work on you, not as an assignment, as an invitation from the part of you that already knows the answer to the part of you that has not yet fully heard it. The tradition does not end its teaching with a feeling, it ends it with a direction. Turn! Look here. Stop looking elsewhere for what has always been here. Not because the world outside is not real or not worth engaging, because the happiness in the world outside, when it is genuine, when it is lasting, when it genuinely nourishes, is always the reflection of happiness already present in the one encountering it. The world is a mirror, a beautiful, complex, endlessly varied mirror, and what it reflects, always in every encounter, is what the person meeting it brings. Bring happiness to the world, and the world reflects happiness back. And happiness, the genuine, unconditional, grounded kind, is built in solitude, in honest self-examination, in the patient, unglamorous, completely worthwhile practice of becoming genuinely good company for yourself. This video has been a long journey, and if you have stayed this far, you have done something unusual and genuinely valuable. You have given yourself 2 hours of genuine attention to your own inner life, to the questions of solitude and happiness and what it means to be genuinely okay with yourself. That act, however it felt, however much the mind wandered, however often the questions seemed more complex than the answers, was itself an act of genuine self-respect. An act that says, my inner life matters enough to take seriously. My aloneness is worth understanding. My happiness is worth working toward, not just waiting for. That seriousness, that genuine willingness to take your own inner life seriously, is the foundation of everything this video has pointed toward. And you already have it because you stayed. To the person watching this who is genuinely acutely lonely right now, who came to this video not from intellectual curiosity but from genuine pain, this part is specifically for you. The pain is real. We are not telling you it is not. But the pain is not the final word about your situation. It is a signal, a very loud, very clear signal, pointing at something that needs attention. Not more company, more genuine contact with yourself. That contact, begun honestly, maintained patiently, genuinely tended over time, changes things, not all at once, but it changes them. And the first honest breath of genuine self-presence, however brief, however tentative, however accompanied by the continuing pain, is already the beginning of the change that the pain has been calling for. Every person who has genuinely found happiness in their own aloneness traveled through the territory of genuine loneliness to get there, not around it, through it. By genuinely sitting with it, genuinely examining it, genuinely befriending the uncomfortable quiet rather than fleeing it. That path, through rather than around, is the only path that actually leads somewhere real. And every step on it, however imperfect, however incomplete, however accompanied by the familiar loneliness that keeps showing up, is a step in the right direction. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be to take the next step, and the next step is always the same. One breath, one moment of genuine presence, one small act of honest self-attention. Begin. The Buddhist tradition that has been drawn on throughout this video makes one final, radical, completely sincere claim about the person listening to this right now. You have within you, in the quality of your own awareness, the exact thing that every human being who has ever sought genuine happiness has been seeking. Not as potential, not as something to be developed from scratch, as presence, the actual, living, always here quality of awareness that is present in every moment of experience, including this one. It does not require any particular circumstance. It does not require any particular achievement. It does not require the arrival of any particular person or the resolution of any particular situation. It requires only the genuine, honest, patient, repeatedly renewed willingness to stop looking elsewhere and to look here, at what is present, in this awareness, in this moment, in this completely sufficient and completely irreplaceable now. Here is the final thought, the one that is genuinely open, the one that is not a conclusion but a beginning. You are alone right now. In one way or another, in this moment or in the many moments that will follow, you are, as every human being always is, fundamentally alone with your own awareness. What is the quality of that aloneness right now? Not what you think it should be, not what you will try to make it. What is it, honestly, in this actual moment of genuine looking? Whatever it is, that is the starting point, and the starting point is always enough to begin. Happiness alone is not a destination that some people reach and others do not. It is a direction, a genuine, honest, consistently chosen direction toward the quality of inner relationship that makes genuine happiness available in any circumstance. Every step in that direction is a genuine arrival, not a preliminary, an actual arrival at what has always been here. The direction is clear, the path is available. The first step is always the same, genuine presence in this moment with whatever is actually here. You have everything you need. You have always had everything you need. And now, if this video has done what it set out to do, you have a clearer map of how to find it. The world genuinely needs more people who have found genuine happiness in their own company. Not because solitude is superior to connection. It is not, because the people who are genuinely happy alone bring a quality to every connection they make that changes the quality of every relationship, every community, every collective endeavor they participate in. They are not using connection to manage inner discomfort. They are choosing it from a place of genuine abundance. And the world built by people who are choosing connection from genuine abundance rather than clinging to it from genuine scarcity is a measurably more compassionate, more creative, more genuinely human world. Your inner work is not selfish. It is the most generous thing you can do for a world that needs people who have genuinely found their ground. Thank you, genuinely, for giving this video the quality of attention you brought to it, for showing up honestly with a question that most people are afraid to ask directly, for being the kind of person who takes their inner life seriously enough to spend 2 hours exploring what the oldest wisdom has to say about it. That seriousness is a form of courage, and the courage to be genuinely honest with yourself about your own inner life, about the quality of your aloneness, about what genuinely nourishes you, about what you actually are when the performance stops, is the specific courage that changes lives. You have it. The fact that you are here is evidence that you have it. If this video gave you something genuine, even one moment of genuine recognition, one breath that was more conscious than the one before it, please like it now. That one action is how you tell us this kind of honest, unhurried, genuinely deep exploration is worth continuing. And it is how the channel can keep creating it for you and for everyone who finds their way here. Share this with the person in your life who you know is struggling with aloneness, who is treating their solitude as a wound rather than a resource, who needs to hear someone say directly and sincerely that they are enough. Subscribe to Wisdom Woven because the conversations ahead are going to keep going deeper, and the community that is building here is one of the most genuinely engaged, genuinely honest communities on this platform. You belong here. You have always belonged here, and we are genuinely glad you came. Leave a comment below and make it a real one, not a performance. Tell us what changed for you in this video. What did you see about your own aloneness that you had not seen before? What are you going to do differently tomorrow morning in the first ordinary moment of your actual solitary life? We read every comment on this channel, every single one, because your experience of this material is not separate from the teaching. It is part of it. And the reflection you leave here, honest, searching, genuinely human, is part of what the next person who finds this video will receive. So make it worth receiving.